talk about power and the fact that men and women view power very differently and why that matters. It's really a matter of power over versus power to. One small shift in word with big implications. And I'm going to come back to that shift, but first I want to tell you a few power stories. I guess these are partly my stories, but they're really your stories too. And the stories actually of almost anybody who's ever had any sort of relationship with power, and they definitely need to be rewritten. I've always felt slightly uncomfortable, out of place really, in traditional power structures and traditional hierarchies, and I always assumed that that was my fault. I remember being a young reporter based in Moscow. The Soviet Union was in free fall, and I was in the middle of an editorial meeting when I was told calmly but bluntly, this was in the middle of the coup against Gorbachev, to calm down. Have any of you ever heard that phrase? Well, I was floored, I was humiliated, and I was confused. I mean, I hadn't cried. I hadn't even yelled. I think years later, I've realized what I had been in that moment was passionate about what I thought was going to happen next with the coup and how I thought we should be positioning our troops. I have an advanced degree in Russian studies. I speak Russian. My reporting at the time was getting really good reviews, but I guess it was almost like that part of me was on mute to my bosses, or maybe I was irritating white noise because I just didn't sound either the part of traditional network correspondent full of baritone and gravitas, or traditional woman happy to be accommodating. A few years later, I was back in Washington and I was covering the White House, and the theme shifted to how I should change, how I should look. Have you thought about Botox to get rid of that frowny thing you do? How I should sound. A deeper register is more authoritative. We have a voice coach. How I should conduct my interviews. You gotta be more gotcha, you gotta be tougher. You seem too soft. I'll never forget actually standing on the White House lawn seconds before I was about to go live one night, and I was jolted by a voice barking in my ear, not with last-minute editorial instructions, but this: Shipman, lose the scarf. That was disconcerting, to say the least. For the record, I still have scarf PTSD. I'm not sure I've worn one in 20 years. I tried Botox, but it really freaked me out because I guess I like being able to frown. And after about 10 years literally, I finally got comfortable with my journalistic style, my storytelling skills, the fact that my soft style of questioning actually seemed to yield raw, often more interesting, unexpected answers. I guess that was me at the time starting to try to redefine power, starting to move away power over. I was succeeding outwardly, but boy, I was having a lot of struggles with the system, the ego, the hierarchy, people who seemed to want to use their power over me. My head was always spinning. I remember just thinking, are these battles worth it? In a way, I think I was living a version of power over when what I really wanted was power to tell my stories the way I wanted to tell them and as me. I remember one moment, I was sitting really depressed in the parking lot of my neighborhood grocery store thinking, maybe I'm just not ambitious enough. And that's a thought that stuck with me for years. It didn't occur to me to doubt the system. I don't know whether that resonates with any of you. I mean, maybe you weren't told to lose a scarf, but maybe there was something else that power asked you to lose or bury, something that was important to you. Well, I have a fundamentally, even radically different understanding of power today. It's one I want to share with you, and it's one, boy, I really wish I had known back then. Men and women really don't imagine, use, or even define power in the same way. And this power over versus power to is no tomato-tomato situation. It's really a clash of sensibilities. Let me tell you another story that I think you probably recognize and that will help illustrate the fallout from that clash. You know that timeline, the ascent of man? It starts out sort of an ape hunched over and slowly over time straightening up to Neanderthal, and then finally at the end, Homo sapien. It's called the March of Progress. Well, imagine this, the progress of woman. So she's also hunched over at the beginning, but mainly from carrying bags of groceries, loads of laundry, children are tugging on her all over. She's not even near to Neanderthal, and that final destination, the confident corporate titan, is way, way out there somewhere. But slowly, diligently, she marches, straightening up, maybe gaining shoulder pads, shape-shifting, carrying a briefcase, until finally, she appears confident and more, well, like a man. Today's woman stands heroically so close to the pinnacle and just under, oh, bummer, is that a glass ceiling? Huh, and why does it seem to just keep receding? But no matter, she is armed with a sledgehammer and she is ready to break her way into this exclusive club that we so desperately want to be a part of, a version of power created by men for men. Well, look, I got off that heroic march at some point, and I have to confess, I often felt like a bit of a loser for it. I mean, I can tell a different story about that decision, even to myself. I was tired of dealing with the egos. I didn't like all the meetings, managing all the people. I prefer writing. And actually, I have more flexibility. But the fact is, I always thought, like so many women, that the problem was with me, that it wasn't the path. I think that's because we all accepted that destination as a universal truth, right? It was just the place that we had to be. Well, spoiler alert, that power story is a myth, and it's not even a very good one. I mean, the first problem with it is, why on earth aren't we there yet? Why should this journey take so long? Women have more education than men, more advanced degrees of all sorts, and yes, we've made a lot of progress to the middle. But our numbers in terms of C-suites, in terms of corporate boards, in terms of roles in government are depressingly stagnant. Right now, the number of women around the world in government offices, 25%. And at this rate, we will have gender parity in 130 years. 10% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women right now. Are we supposed to celebrate numbers like that? But really, I think the more profound question is, if we have to break glass to get in, is that really the right destination? Maybe power can have a different path. Maybe it can have a different look. Yes, a different destination. Imagine this, a different version of the ascent of woman. Maybe mid-timeline, she steps off the path, heads off in a different direction, on an adventure unconstrained by existing ceilings. Maybe she trades her power blazer for sneakers. Maybe she's gathering children, friends, colleagues along the way. Maybe she even stops to dance. I am open to suggestions, but the point is the possibilities are endless. Because consider this, maybe, just maybe, we have power all wrong. Maybe we don't have to change women and everyone else who hasn't fit the system. Maybe we can change power. Power to, instead of power over, a power shift. And not only a literal shift from men to women, or let me just be blunt and say from white men to just about everyone else in the world. Yes, that matters. But I'm talking about a shift in mindset, broadening the way we view power is good for everyone. Why do I believe this? My co-author and I spent the last 5 years trying to unpack power and answer the question as to why women just don't have more of it. I think, actually, I'll confess, we thought we knew the answer in advance. We figured we would be writing about bias, about workplace problems, about work-life balance, about the fact that women just need to be shrewder, bolder, all of that kind of stuff. But the problem, it turns out, is more elemental, and it starts with definitions. For the last couple of 100 years, power's been defined largely by prominent men, academics, as a kind of force used on or over things or people, power over. A has power over B if A can get B to do something that B doesn't really want to do. Not much fun being B, but to be fair, I think that's a reflection of the way power is used in the world. The point is power over. This version of power is lean, crisp, and hierarchical, and it definitely has a forceful edge. But something interesting is happening in the halls of academia. More and more women are joining the study of power, and as they come, they are asking different questions, and as that happens, the way we view power, even the way we define it, is being remade in real time. Diversity at work. Here are the sorts of things they're finding. Right now, anyway, men do tend to be more hierarchical. They do tend to focus more on social dominance. Women, on the other hand, don't see power as much as a zero-sum game the way men do. We see power as an engine through which we get things done. We ask why. We think power to do what? Power to definitely resonated. We like to get shit done. It also kind of seemed like naming a power, a societal power that we already wield, but it's a power that isn't really valued at work. Once we saw this version of power too, we started to look around the world and notice that women who've already navigated the whole hierarchy and made it to the top are in fact already using power differently. It's not that they received some power to manifesto that they're implementing. They just naturally use it differently. They use it with more listening and collaboration, like Zanny Minton-Beddoes at The Economist, or with radical authenticity, like Sent Marshall, who's running the Dallas Mavericks, or with targeted disruptions, like Christine Lagarde, who recently told her Central European Bank Board that time off to care for children, years at home raising your children, counts in her mind as legitimate, even compelling job experience for her organization. She's putting a value on work we already do, on power we already have. Something else we noticed, power too isn't afraid to get small, even the size of toilets. For Lucy Cisse and some of her fellow women parliamentarians in Senegal, getting toilets into schools became their power play so that girls who are menstruating don't have to miss class. Let me pause and say here, I'm talking a lot, as you've probably noticed, about men and women and dividing things into those terms, the way, frankly, a lot of the compelling research is divided. But all of us as human beings, no matter how we identify, are along a spectrum in terms of our behavior, our tendencies. And I certainly hope that everyone who's had any experience with power can relate to some of this. Let's face it, old school power needs a makeover anyway. Study after study shows that power can corrupt, that in fact power can lead people as they gain it to become less empathetic. Power too might guard against that. It's got more of a focus on outcome instead of ego, and in fact, recent studies about women rising to power show that they seem to maintain their empathy as they rise. Old school power also has a big demand problem. Women are rejecting it in big numbers. That's not a good thing for diversity. It's not a good thing for the bottom line of companies. Definitely not a good thing for the world. But it's not that we're rejecting power outright. We just value a lot of other things in life, more things in life, as it turns out in some interesting studies, than men do. We value community, time with family, time with friends, more than we value the number of head count we have reporting to us or power over people. And even when we value power goals like that, we worry they will be in direct conflict with our other life goals. Power, too, which focuses on mission, actually would tap into the fact that women are intensely focused on mission. At the moment, men are more focused on power goals. They have narrower life goals than men. But a word about men here. They are stuck too. So many of the men we interviewed said, we'd love to see power redefined. We'd like a less rigid power. Power, too, sounds great to us. But the fact is, society still judges men harshly when they attempt to get out of the box that they're in. Let me just give you one example of how complicated this is. In couples where the woman out-earns her partner, which is about 1/3 of all US couples right now, both parties misrepresent that data, lie about it to the Census Bureau. It's like they're trying to put a traditional veil over their relationship to the US government. Power over limits. Power to expands. It's better for everyone. Men need to be able to have broader life goals, connection, the important work of, frankly, nurturing humanity that so often right now they don't get to be a full part of. Let's rewrite that expansive power story together, one full of winding, twisty paths, different destinations. And ideally, can we remove the ceilings, please? It is way past time. As you write your own path, think about this. Remember to shift your mindset. It may be the single most important thing you can do. Power isn't something to be accumulated. It's something to be used. So think power to, and then use your power. Thank you.